Now, tonight, the big show, Sleep with Jimmy Kennedy. And I'm going to introduce you to Jimmy. Jimmy is a senior scientist at InsideTracker. He's in the final stages of his PhD in biochemistry, and he has researched genetics' influence on immune response to infectious diseases and has a strong passion for translating science to better people's health and wellness. Jimmy is a lifelong athlete, having played competitive hockey and more recently competing in CrossFit, where he teaches the importance of exercise and movement in his spare time as a CrossFit Level 1 certified coach. And now let me bring on Jimmy. Let's see. Jimmy, welcome. Welcome. How are you tonight?
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. This is going to be a fun little talk.
Yeah, no, sleep is it's one of my passions. I'm gonna have to say.
Yeah.
I do love a good night's sleep, as do many of our watchers, and it's my hope to learn a little bit about. I'm all right at it, but I could definitely be a little bit better, and so I'm looking forward to your lecture here.
And if anything, if everyone takes only one thing away, it's just that no one's going to be perfect at sleep. It's always going to be a work in progress. These are some of the things that I've done and incorporated into my life that help. So I'm happy to share those, and I'm happy to kind of dive into the science a little bit about it, inform everybody.
So let's get into it. I'm going to let you take it over here. I'll pull up your slides, and I'll talk to you soon.
Awesome. Thanks. All right, everybody. Okay, so Jason did that wonderful introduction. So like I said, I kind of want to start off and say, what drove me to this? Why do I research sleep? Why do I like to kind of biohack my sleep, and why is it important to me? So as Jason mentioned, I was a lifelong athlete. I played competitive hockey all growing up through high school, prep school, and college. After that, I kind of transitioned into CrossFit. And with every competition or every game that always came my way, there was always those nerves, that anxiousness feeling. And I kind of loved it. It kind of meant that I cared about the games. But they never went away, and they still don't go away, even when I have a big competition or presentation or something meaningful in my life. So one of the big things with CrossFit that drove me down to this performance optimization was that CrossFit was way more of a performance sport. CrossFit it's an individual sport for the most part. You don't have your team to rely on you. So the training is very intense, and your performance is judged by you and you alone. So the stress levels that came along with the training and the competition increased. And now that's one side of things. And now I always found myself, when I had a big competition, or even on a different side of sports, if I have something meaningful going on in my life, like a presentation or a big day, I'm always very stressed. And you always feel so exhausted throughout the day. But every time I laid down in bed at night and my face hit the pillow, I was wide awake and I couldn't stop thinking about it. So that's kind of where I knew that, sleep optimization was something that's really, really important to me. And as I mentioned, I am not a pro at sleeping by any means, but I've come a long way. There's been a lot of things that I've incorporated into like my sleeping schedule and into my daily life, and I'm way better than when I was. So even though if I get stressed, or we all have stress and anxiety, especially right now with the pandemic and what's going on, it's so much better than what it was before. So let's jump into it here. Okay, so sleep. I like to call sleep, it's the ultimate performance enhancer. It's the best legal performance enhancing methodology that I've found. And you can see on the pictures here, I don't just mean performance with athletes. I mean performance in your life, performance in day-to-day jobs, whether it's the boardroom, whether you're a doctor, a nurse, a frontline worker, whether you're a mom or a dad. Sleep is going to enhance and perform your life, and it touches almost every system in your body. So sleep, like when we think about sleep and when we think about like a great good night's sleep, it literally is the time where your body rejuvenates itself. It repairs itself when you sleep from any damage or illness that came across your day. Really, really important right now. It reinforces your immune system. It helps fight stress. That's the kind of the topic of all of what we're talking about here in these classes. More on a metabolic note, it helps regulate your blood sugar. It improves your reflexes. It increases your energy. So sleep touches so many things. And that's kind of why sleep is why I call the ultimate performance enhancer. And I think we've all heard that term. People say, I'll sleep when I'm dead. Well, I think gone are the days where we think that. And I just want to say like that this is why to me it's so important. And all those things that I just listed and what we'll talk about for the rest of this presentation, I think gone are the days where I'll sleep when I'm dead, or I'll sleep when I'm dead. And everyone, I think, is starting to realize how important this topic is. So we can start. Okay. So this is where I kind of wanted to start. I wanted to kind of start with what regulates our sleep. Why do we sleep at night? Why are we awake during the day? Things like that, or at least why we should be. And a lot of it kind of all starts with your circadian rhythm. So, what is the circadian rhythm? It's basically your body's internal clock. It's your body's rhythm for when to go to sleep, when to wake up. And it's specifically, it regulates the processes in your body that prepare you for rest and recovery and rejuvenation. And then when it's time to wake up, it prepares you for waking and for starting your day. So when we talk, one thing I wanted to mention, we have some people that are considered morning people and some people that are considered evening people. Well, that's essentially regulated by your circadian rhythm. And morning people versus evening people, that's called your chronotype. So a lot of that's all based off of your circadian rhythm. So going a little deeper into this, the master regulator of your circadian rhythm is essentially your nervous system. And it starts with your eyes. So if we're talking about our rhythm and getting ready to prepare to go to sleep, your eyes detect when it's starting to get dark out. And those signals are passed to your brain. Specifically, it reaches the hypothalamus. And that triggers the release of neurotransmitters and hormones, which initiate the sleep process. We're going to get into some of those hormones later on. So that initiates the sleep process. And then in the morning, your eyes actually detect light and your brain senses that again. It interprets that and it prepares your body to wake up. Alertness increases, your heart rate increases, and it gets you ready for the day. Okay. So now here we go. So two of the hormones that I talked about that are regulating your circadian rhythm. And I think we've all heard of these hormones, cortisol and melatonin. So these are the signals that your brain sends out into your body when it gets dark, melatonin, when it gets light, cortisol. And these are the two main players that regulate your sleep cycle, as you can kind of see in the little graph here. It might be a little bit hard to see, but melatonin is on the top, cortisol is in the middle, and growth hormone is on the bottom. We'll talk about growth hormone in a little bit. But melatonin is the hormone that's produced by the brain in response to darkness. It usually is produced maybe 2 to 4 hours before we go to sleep. And in and of itself, melatonin doesn't make us sleepy, but it triggers the signals and the cascade of hormones and neurotransmitters that make us sleepy. So now on the other side of that, we have cortisol. What we know cortisol as is our stress hormone. That's kind of what all this topic is about. Cortisol, stress levels, they're all probably pretty high right now. But when we're stressed, we probably have high levels or elevated levels of cortisol in our blood. On a molecular and physiological level, what cortisol does is it regulates our nervous system. So generally, you can see in the middle here, we wake up in the morning with our highest levels of cortisol, and they tend to go down throughout the day, or at least they should be. I think what we're starting to see now in this day and age is that people maybe have a lot elevated cortisol levels throughout the day. And as we're going to get into this stuff, you're going to realize why is that hindering your sleep and why is that a bad thing? So generally, like I said, we see our highest levels in the morning right before or as we are waking up. This is preparing our body for the day ahead. What it's doing on a physiological level is it's activating our sympathetic nervous system. That's our fight or flight response. This increases our heart rate, our blood pressure. It increases blood sugar for energy throughout the day. It actually is going to suppress our immune system a little bit, especially when that fight or flight response really, really kicks in, really high cortisol levels. And it also slows down our digestion. So you might discredit this fight or flight response now. Like I say, we're not cavemen, right? But we have several modern day stressors, whether that be a fight with your spouse, a big presentation at work, or maybe there's a virus that's running rampant throughout the world right now, killing millions of people, right? So we all have stresses. It's not like what you think of back in the caveman days, but this is still activating our sympathetic nervous system. It's causing cortisol to be high, and that's probably why a lot of people have such trouble sleeping. Okay,
So, Jimmy, I'm jumping back in because we are going to the interactive part here and asking a question for our audience. The question we have is, how many stages of sleep are there? I've heard of different stages of sleep. I actually don't know them all, but we're wondering if anybody out there in the viewing audience knows how many distinct stages of sleep there are. Because you can fire that in the comments. We're going to give you a few seconds. Jimmy, I just want to say that that's very interesting that the cortisol levels start highest in the morning and they come down throughout the day, though they should be.
it should be coming down. Yeah.
So that's when you're waking up, that's probably the last stage of sleep. So I'm not getting any answers yet, but I'm going to take a guess. I'm going to say somebody just said 3. Last Set Fitness says 3. I wanted to say 4.
Okay.
So we got 2 people for 3.
Yeah. So the answer that we're going to go with is 4. And when we pop up the next slide, we will see. I'll show you guys why. There's probably one in there that you think is not really a stage of sleep, but actually it's a stage of sleep.
All right, Jimmy, you go back at answering the question.
So there you have it, guys. Those are the 4 stages of sleep, not to be confused with cycles of sleep. Because your body, as you sleep at night, you're actually going to be cycling through these stages. But there's the one that maybe trick a little bit people. But awake is actually considered a phase of sleep. I kind of look at this as it's a really simple way as an indicator of your overall sleep quality. And obviously, we want to try to minimize that awake time throughout the night. You actually wake up maybe 10 to 15 times per night. Most of them go undetected. Maybe you know that you wake up 2 or 3 times if you have to go to the bathroom or you're tossing and turning, but you're actually probably waking up 10 to 15 times per night. The next stage that we have there, we call light sleep or non-REM sleep stage 2. This serves essentially as the transition between awake sleep or awake time, deep sleep, and REM sleep, and it generally accounts for about 50% of your total sleep time. The next 2 ones, and we'll go into these a little bit deeper, but we have deep sleep. It's called also known as slow wave sleep. It's considered the physically restorative sleep. And then we have REM sleep. REM stands for rapid eye movement. It's considered the mentally restorative sleep, and this is the time where you dream. This is like where dreams come into play. So as I said, you cycle through these stages of sleep every night, usually between 3 to 5, maybe 6 cycles per night. And typically sleep cycles are around 90 minutes, but really they can range anywhere from 30 minutes to 2 hours, depending on how much time you're spending in each stage. So now we're going to actually dive into 2 of these stages, deep sleep and REM sleep. Okay. So deep sleep, as I said, it's also known as slow wave sleep. The reason it's called slow wave sleep is because if you were to look at your brain waves while you're in deep sleep, they're extremely slow. Very little brain activity going on there. And as I said, it's the physically restorative sleep. So this is the time where your body is repairing itself. It's repairing damaged tissues. This also includes muscles after intense exercise or competition. And a fun fact, actually, 95% of your growth hormone is actually produced while you're in deep sleep. So that's just to go to show you how important this phase is, especially for physical restoration. The deep sleep cycle usually it begins pretty quickly after falling asleep. It's the first cycle, or it's the first stage that happens in your cycle of sleep. You usually go from awake, light for a very short period of time, and then generally, or at least you should be falling into deep sleep pretty quickly. And that first cycle is going to be the longest one. It's going to be between 45, maybe 90 minutes on the really long side. And the actual time of your deep sleep decreases as the night progresses. So as those sleep cycles go on, you're usually getting less and less deep sleep, and you're actually getting more and more REM sleep. We'll get into that in a second. At InsideTracker, we're always talking about our optimal zone, our optimal levels. Well, we have an optimal level of anything that's usually greater than 15 to 20% of your total sleep. If your deep sleep is within that range, you're doing great. Some of the benefits, as I said, it's very physically restorative. It improves your immunity. You're going to see cell and tissue repair, increased blood flow to the muscles, also helps balance your metabolism. So those are some big benefits of deep sleep. And now we'll go into REM sleep. So REM sleep, as I mentioned, is called rapid eye movement, and it's almost the opposite of deep sleep when it comes to your brain activity. Your brain is highly active during REM sleep, almost as active as when you're awake. It says rapid eye movement. It's actually it's called that because your eyes actually move very, very fast in your sockets. And if you ever saw someone while they were in REM sleep, I gotta say it's kind of creepy. But that's why it's called what it is. That's what's called REM. And this is the part where you're typically dreaming. When you're having dreams, you're typically in REM sleep. Another cool little fact: your brain actually sends out signals to inhibit movement, especially of your limbs, while you're in REM sleep, so you don't actually act out your dreams. So I thought that was pretty cool. As I said, if deep sleep is the physically restorative, REM sleep is the mentally restorative sleep. It solidifies your short-term memory into long-term memory. And this is not just for memory or for cognition, but we also muscle memory too. We can't leave that out. So muscle memory and coordination, those are all things that are solidified, and those neurological pathways, those are all solidified while you're in REM sleep. REM sleep, as I said, it comes after deep sleep usually. And the cycles are a little bit shorter than deep sleep. We're probably, anywhere in between 10 to 30 minutes of REM sleep every cycle. And those tend to get longer as the night progresses. So generally, your deep sleep, and you can kind of see, I know it's kind of small, but the little graph on the slide here, you can kind of see the deep sleep cycles, those are towards the bottom. Those are typically happening earlier in the night. And the REM sleep, those are the light blue ones. Those are usually happening later in the night, more towards the morning. And it's also kind of why you tend to dream more in the morning, or you're waking up from your dreams more in the morning. Okay, so core sleep. This is really quick. You guys have kind of heard the benefits of all these sleep. So, the effects of core sleep, well, yes, it's the opposite of those benefits. 1 or 2 nights of core sleep is probably not going to be a big deal. And honestly, it happens to all of us. No one's going to be a professional on sleep. And you could have one great night's sleep, the next night you could have a very poor night's sleep. But what is really important is people who are chronically poor sleepers. They're chronically not getting deep sleep, they're chronically not getting REM sleep. When that stuff begins to happen, we start to see things like the risk of depression increases, obesity increases, the risk of type 2 diabetes increases, the risk of cardiovascular disease and cancer goes up, the risk of injury, whether it's in the gym, if coordination is low, that's always high. You have a very strong decrease in aerobic capacity or aerobic endurance. So these are all things of why sleep is so important. And some of the effects that if you're consistently getting poor sleep, these are the things that you might start to get worried about. Okay, we got another question, Jason.
Another question here, right? So, question: what biomarkers are affected by sleep? How is sleep going to show up in your InsideTracker test? That's a good question. Who's got an answer for that? Who is thinking about their InsideTracker results and thinking about where the poor sleep might show up? Let's see if we got any answers out there. Anybody have some guesses?
We don't have a set number here, by the way, either. But let's see if anyone can throw out some biomarkers. Do you have one that comes to mind, Jason? And don't say cortisol because we already talked about it.
I was just going to say because that has to do with it. But so I'm imagine as a male, testosterone I think would probably be affected by not sleep. I believe that has to do with the sleep cycles in some degree. Am I right?
Yes. So testosterone is probably the number one, maybe number two. We know we said cortisol, but testosterone is right up there with cortisol being affected by your sleep.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we got a listener says cortisol about inflammation. How do you feel about that?
That's another one. So you kind of heard me say a couple times there that sleep is very important with regulating your immune system, and with chronically poor sleep, we usually dampen our immunity. So, and that is very true. So we have a couple biomarkers that we can dive into here, and ones that specifically we test at InsideTracker, so we can get onto that. But yeah, those are all definitely involved.
Okay. So let's go with that. I'm going to leave it over to you again.
Okay. So yeah, you guys were definitely right. You hit testosterone, you hit the inflammation markers. We obviously talked about cortisol. That's a big one. High cortisol levels will lead to poor sleep, like we said, with your circadian rhythm and your sleep cycles. We want to see cortisol levels coming down throughout the day. They're peaking in the morning, or at least they're supposed to be peaking, but those high cortisol levels can definitely lead to poor sleep quality, especially trying to fall asleep. And then in turn, poor sleep can increase cortisol. So it's kind of a nasty little cycle with that one. Another one, glucose. I think I've mentioned this maybe a little bit before, but poor sleep can definitely lead to reduced insulin sensitivity and increased glucose in your blood. So that's one to watch out for. Testosterone, especially for you men out there. Getting good quality sleep is the number one way to boost your testosterone and your free testosterone. The majority of your testosterone is actually produced during REM sleep, close to the morning. That's also why testosterone levels are usually highest in the morning. So poor sleep, again, like I said, that leads to an increase of cortisol. And if you've seen any of our other material before on cortisol, usually when you have high levels of cortisol, you have decreased levels of testosterone. So that's one to watch out for. And then the immune markers. HSCRP, it's our marker of general inflammation that can definitely be elevated. And then we also have our white blood cell count. Those are your immune cells. That has a pretty strong effect, that is very strongly connected to quality of sleep. And we're actually going to get into sleep and immunity right now. So I thought it was really important to talk about sleep and immunity, specifically that connection, given what's going on right now in this pandemic, and immunity is so important. And I feel like a lot of people, even myself included, we feel like there's so much out of our control in regards to immunity. We are now waiting for this vaccine and stuff like that, but there's still a lot you can do to have a healthy, strong immune system. And sleep is one of those things. So sleep, like I said, with deep sleep especially, that's your time where your body's recovering. So with that said, poor sleep means lack of recovery, and that usually will lead to increased immune suppression. Your immune system is going to be dampened there. So as you can see in the graphic here, lack of sleep significantly increases your chances of succumbing to viral infections. And there's obviously a very big viral infection going on right now. So you can see here, chronically getting less than 5 hours of sleep can increase your chances of almost 50% of succumbing to a viral infection that you've been in contact with. On the other side of that, getting good quality sleep, talking about 7 to 9 hours of sleep here, helps support a strong immune system. Immune surveillance, that's your immune system's going around your body looking for those foreign invaders, looking for pathogens. That actually peaks during the night. And quality sleep promotes a very favorable environment for your immune system to fight off these pathogens. And specifically, if we kind of want to dive one more layer down, the activation of lymphocytes, or T cells, those are viral fighting cells, or one of the cells that fights off these viruses. The activation of these cells is highest during your deep sleep cycles, and a lot higher than when you are awake throughout the day. So that's just one big, strong connection there of sleep and immunity, getting into some pretty big reasons of why sleep is so important for your immune system. Okay, and then there's another topic that I kind of wanted to isolate out here, and that was sleep and fat loss. And I think this is one connection that maybe a lot of people might not be too aware about, or they're not too sure about this one. But there's definitely a very strong connection, and I pack it into two different categories. There's a very strong connection on the physiological side, and then there's a very, very strong connection on the behavioral side. So on the physiological side, I said that, you know, sleep helps regulate your hormones and your hormone production. But two hormones that we haven't talked about yet, ghrelin and leptin. So these are hormones that specifically regulate your hunger and satiety levels. So ghrelin, that's the hormone that signals to your body that you're hungry, that your stomach is empty. Leptin, it's the hormone that senses when you're full, when you've eaten enough. So you can kind of see, you know, dysregulation of those two hormones can lead to feelings of constantly being hungry, never being full. And then the other one, as we talked about several times, increased cortisol. When our cortisol is elevated, we're storing more fat, or we're increasing our blood sugar. Both of those things not very good for weight loss. So now on the behavioral side of that, we have lack of sleep decreasing your mental inhibition. It's probably decreasing your mood. No one's in a great mood if they get poor sleep the night before. Stress is probably higher. Decision making is probably not going to be the best. So, you know, we're going to start to see behavioral changes, like we're more likely to eat more junk food. We're probably staying up later. Maybe we're binge watching TV shows. We're consuming more caffeine because we're exhausted, right? All those things, it's a vicious cycle. Those things will lead to more dysregulated sleep patterns, which lead to more of these bad habits. So, and all these bad habits can easily make fat loss or weight loss very, very hard. So I thought those two things, sleep and immunity and sleep and fat loss, I think were two really important things that we wanted to talk about. And then we have one last question.
One last question. All right. This is the one. True or false? Alcohol helps you sleep deeper. Alcohol helps you sleep deeper. Now,
what do you think?
I haven't had a hard time dozing off, you know, after a few drinks, but I don't know if I'm actually sleeping deeper. So this is talking about that quality restorative sleep, correct?
Exactly. Yeah. So you're kind of hitting the nail on the head here. So a lot of people think that, you know, if you have a couple drinks before bed, or maybe if you're out, you know, out late and you have a lot of alcohol, you kind of go to sleep instantly. You kind of pass out, right? You're actually going beyond the proper sleep cycles. It's more of a sedative, and we can kind of we'll get into why alcohol is not that bad. Or actually, we can do it here. But so your body is very busy processing the alcohol to clear it from its system. While your body is doing that, it's not having time to properly enter the cycles of sleep. There's also probably hormone dysregulation when it comes to alcohol consumption. Your liver is very, very busy detoxing your blood. So it's inhibiting your body from entering the deep and REM sleep cycles. Sorry?
Like you're being more active, sort of.
Exactly. So you might be getting a lot of light sleep, but that's why you might pass out and you might sleep for 10 hours after some binge drinking, but you wake up feeling so exhausted in the morning. And that's kind of why you're not getting that deep restorative and mentally restorative sleep that you need.
I'm happy to report false. Our viewers got this one right. So
I figured this was a pretty smart group. So that's good. All right.
I'm going to move you on to your next slide.
Okay. So what we were talking about here, I've kind of been giving you guys a ton of background into the sleep, the cycles, what's regulating your circadian rhythm and things like that. So now you're probably wondering, like, what can I do to better my sleep? So I kind of came up with 5 tips. Like, to have a confession here, I actually found a 6th one, but I looped it in with the alcohol here, caffeine. I put them together. So you might not be happy with me with this one, but limiting your alcohol and your caffeine intake is probably the number one thing that I recommend to people if they're trying to improve their sleep. As I said, alcohol, it's actually more of a sedative. It's inhibiting your proper sleep cycles. Your body is busy detoxing the alcohol, so you're not entering those deep and REM sleep cycles. And now with caffeine, obviously it's a stimulant. We really want to, or I strongly suggest that you're avoiding caffeine at least 4 hours before you're going to bed, so that caffeine has a chance to get out of your system. I actually personally, 2 o'clock is like my hard stop of caffeine. I try not to have any caffeine after 2 o'clock. I think I'm a little bit sensitive to caffeine. So limiting alcohol, limit your caffeine. If you are going to be consuming alcohol and caffeine, try to do it as far away from sleep as you can. Okay, the next one, electronic screens. If my wife were to hear this right now and I'm giving this presentation, she probably will call me the biggest hypocrite because I'm on my phone a lot when it's in bed. I know it's bad for me. I know, and like I said, I'm not a pro at this, but blue light that comes from electronic screens actually stimulates your eyes and it prevents the production of melatonin. So you're actually kind of doing the opposite of what you want to be doing as you're preparing for bed. You're stimulating your eyes with light and its melatonin production is going down. So that's one big thing there. Also, I think we're on social media a lot, or at least that's kind of what I'm doing, is scrolling through social media. It kind of seems like social media is pretty stressful right now. Along with social media, you might be scrolling through your work emails. All of those things, it's actually, it's a stressful thing. It might be making you more anxious. It's the opposite of what we want to be doing when we're going to bed. Okay, number 3, my third habit here. I like to say create a sleep environment or create your sleep cave. There's a couple things that go into that. One of the first things that you guys can probably see here, I have a thermostat. It says war on it. I'm pretty sure the thermostat has been the cause for so many divorces in this country. Everyone's always fighting at what temperature they want, but part of your sleep environment is keeping the room at a low temperature. I say like 65 to 68 degrees. That's going to help you enter deep sleep faster because deep sleep is meant to help your core temperature go down. Your core temperature actually decreases a little bit when you're in deep sleep. So having that room at that cool temperature, or I should say not having it too hot, will help you enter deep sleep faster. We said part of your environment, limiting electronics in the bedroom. That goes for like your smartphones, your laptop. I don't really like having a TV in the bedroom for the same reason. It's stimulating your eyes with light. I know some people swear by falling asleep with TV, but that's definitely not a suggestion that I would say. Along with that, blackout curtains or an eye mask to make it completely dark. And if you like it, sleep with white noise, such as a fan or a sound machine. All great things to help with your sleep environment. Number 4 also has a couple parts to it, creating a bedtime ritual. So I would say one of the number 1 ways to improve your sleep is sleep consistency. That's going to bed and waking up at the same time every night. When I say every night, I also mean weekends. If you can, try to go to sleep at the same time every night and wake up at the same time every night. That's going to help solidify your circadian rhythm, your sleep-wake cycles, and will actually help you improve the quality of sleep that you're getting. Along with that ritual, stretching or some light yoga to decrease muscle tension. Me personally, when I'm super sore, I'm always tossing and turning at night. So stretching or doing like a yin yoga class actually does wonders for decreasing the muscle tension and helping you sleep. Meditate or journaling. You can kind of see here on the graphic, we have meditation, a slide on meditation. Get all those thoughts in your head, get them out of your head, get them on paper. If you have a lot of things on your mind of what you have to do tomorrow at work, jot them down on paper and get them out of your head. Even that does wonders for decreasing mental stress and anxiety. So that's one in there. And then prepare your body and your mind for sleep. It can be have a routine every night. I'm gonna go take a warm bath. I'm gonna get my room dark. I'm gonna lower the temperature. I'm gonna meditate, and I'm gonna read a book until I fall asleep. So all those things are creating a ritual, so your body is sensing it is now time to sleep. Those things all help. And then my last kind of tip here, avoiding large meals, especially ones that are high in fat, saturated fat. Large meals, especially fatty meals, they're harder to digest. Your body is going to be working hard to digest those while you're falling asleep. And that's going to take away from the energy that it wants to use recovering and rejuvenating your body in deep sleep. So that would be my 5th tip there. Okay, so my last kind of topic here, or I actually said my second to last topic here, supplements. Supplements are always a hot topic. I see one person has put in a supplement, I think, in the chat. But I will list, I have a couple supplements here that I'm a big fan of for supporting sleep and helping you get better sleep throughout the night. So my first one is magnesium. So magnesium, it's a mineral. It's responsible for over 500 chemical reactions in the body. When we're talking about sleep here, it really helps to activate the parasympathetic nervous system. So we talked about earlier the sympathetic nervous system. Now we're talking about the parasympathetic nervous system. It's the opposite of that. So the parasympathetic nervous system relaxes the muscles, relaxes your CNS. It prepares your body to for that recovery stage. Excuse me. So magnesium helps activate the parasympathetic nervous system. It also aids in the production of melatonin. So we'll get to that one in a second, but we talked about melatonin and why that's so important. So magnesium helps aid in the production of that. And it also binds to the receptors, GABA receptors they're called. These receptors are another really key feature in relaxing your nervous system. So it helps to activate those. Okay, so my second supplement, vitamin D. We think of this as the sunshine vitamin, and it is. It's really important when we're talking about circadian rhythm and cortisol production. Getting good quality vitamin D outside in the morning really helps regulate that circadian rhythm. So, but at the same time, low vitamin D levels or people with chronically low vitamin D are linked to people that have poor sleep quality and poor efficiency. So efficiency meaning you can fall asleep, but you don't stay asleep, or you're constantly waking up a lot. We're not 100% sure of the mechanism of why vitamin D and its role in quality sleep, but vitamin D receptors have been found in regions of the brain that control sleep. So we definitely think there's something to do there with vitamin D levels, but we do know that low vitamin D levels, people with chronically low vitamin D, are usually correlated with people who don't have poor sleep quality and sleep efficiency. Okay, and then the last one here, the last supplement, melatonin. Now, I want to kind of preface this or put a little asterisk next to it. I do not recommend melatonin to use every single night. Actually, it can be harmful for long-term use and in high doses, but the synthetic form of melatonin very closely resembles your body's form of melatonin. So if you are in a cycle of really having a hard time falling asleep, maybe you're stressed out for something that's coming up the next day, it's okay to pop some melatonin tablets. I always say anything 3 milligrams and under is pretty good. And that will help you get sleepy, it helps you fall asleep faster, and it helps you stay asleep longer. So you're not going to be waking up as often in the middle of the night. But as I said, this is not something that I recommend for daily use. Try to limit it to a few nights in a row, and then take a break from it. Because there are some studies out there that show if your body is getting the synthetic form of melatonin, it's going to stop producing it on its own. Your body is not going to do any work that it doesn't have to do. So then if you were ever to come off of it, your body is going to have a little bit of a hard time producing that stuff again. So that's one supplement that I recommend for you guys if you're kind of in a bad cycle. Okay, so in one of my my top 5 tips, I said to kind of avoid technology, avoid screens, avoid blue light. But I think technology, especially in today's day and age, is a double-edged sword. And there's a lot of cool things with technology that can actually benefit us when we're talking about sleep quality. So we have things like our wearables, Fitbits, Oura Rings, Apple Watches, got all these wearable devices. They all track your sleep, and they actually are all pretty accurate in tracking your sleep too. You can kind of see here, I have a couple on. This is kind of where I geek out. I like to see how much time I'm spending in each phase. I correlate that with my daily habits, my caffeine use, my alcohol use, and excuse me, and I can very clearly see the effects of those on my sleep. So these sleep trackers are really cool. Meditation apps like Calm. I said, you know, forming your sleep routine. Well, we now have all these meditation apps out there that that can really aid. And for a newbie to meditation, Calm and Headspace, and there's other apps out there. Those are awesome. The little light there that I showed, that's the Hatch sleep light. These are actually there's many different ones out there, but they're actually alarm clocks, and they don't use sound whatsoever. You can set the time, and it will start to increase its brightness at the time that you specify. So it wakes you up in a more natural way. Like I said, that light stimulation in the morning is what helps you wake up naturally. And this is a very natural way. It's way better than the loud and sometimes like not scary, but the loud alarm in the morning. So those sleep lights are really, really cool. And then there's one other thing I want to talk about, the blue blocking glasses. So if you are in front of a screen all the time, which I feel like so many of us are, we're working from home, we're almost like glued to our computer screens. Those blue light blocking glasses are a lifesaver. So that they definitely help out. There's also features on laptops and phones now, like night modes, where it limits the blue light. It kind of makes your computer look a little bit yellow. Same type of technology, but all help in limiting your blue light. These are just a few things. I'm sure there's so many other things out there. So if you guys have other things that you use, I would love to hear about them.
All right, Jimmy. So time for some questions. We asked some questions coming into this presentation. So we had a couple from our Instagram crowd come in. I'm going to ask those while we go through those questions. Want to invite, keep one eye on the comments to see if any questions come in after this presentation. So you ready, Jimmy?
Yeah, please hit me.
Okay. So you mentioned an Oura ring, and then we're talking about how it gives us information on our deep sleep, particularly. So someone asks, I only get 20 minutes of deep sleep, even though I sleep for 8 to 9 hours. How can I improve the deep sleep portion of the night?
So this is a tough one because you can't determine like your stages of sleep. Of course, there are certain things that will specifically help the cycles, but honestly, more sleep leads to more deep sleep, if that makes sense, right? I would say my number one recommendation is make sure you're staying consistent with your bedtime and your wake time. So having that sleep consistency, the same bedtime every night, is really going to promote healthy sleep patterns. It really solidifies your circadian rhythm that we talked about. So that would be my number one thing to do, along with some of those other things I mentioned, limiting the electronics and that stuff.
Okay. Next question, we got a runner. A runner asks, do late night runs impact the ability to fall asleep not long afterwards?
This is a highly personalized response. There's some evidence that exercising late at night inhibits sleep, or it takes you a longer time to fall asleep. But then there's other evidence that people who work out within 1 hour of going to sleep actually sleep deeper. So I think it's really personal preference, and I urge you to to experiment with it. I would say maybe from like my own personal side, really intense exercise that definitely, I have a harder time falling asleep if that's too close to bed. So yeah.
Okay, so question, this one is near and dear to my heart, so I would appreciate your answer here. Naps, are naps good? If so, can I become better at taking naps? Are naps going to interfere with your sleep at night?
Let's say naps are not bad. I don't know. I'm not a good napper. I've never been a good napper.
I'm a great napper.
Okay. I know some people who are great nappers too. My little 10-month-old daughter, excellent napper. But there's a trick to napping. What you don't want to do is nap too close to actually going to sleep, because those are gonna clash. It's gonna interfere with your sleep. One tip is I mentioned that sleep cycles are on average 90 minutes long, including your REM and deep sleep. If you have the time to do it, try to nap and set your alarm for 90 minutes. So that's ensuring that you're getting in, or you're trying to get in one full sleep cycle, and your alarm is not going to go off when you're in the middle of deep sleep, which is typically if you wake up when you're in the middle of deep sleep, that's kind of when you wake up and you're groggy and you feel maybe even more tired than going to bed. So that's what I would say. Either shorten it, really short naps, 20, 30 minutes, or if you have time, 90 minutes to try to get in one full cycle.
Okay, speaking of sleep time, coming in from a Facebook user, is more than 8 hours of sleep too much? What are some negative effects that might happen if you sleep too much?
I don't think more than 8 hours is too much. I think I always tell people 7 to 9 hours is like the perfect amount. There is definitely, you probably can have too much sleep. If you're constantly sleeping for 10, 11, 12 hours a night, you can probably wake up, you might feel more tired or lethargic than when you were or not sleeping as much. So that's definitely a side effect there. But I would say 8 is not too much. Yeah, 7 to 9. And again, preference, right? Like some people do really well on 6 to 8 hours of sleep. Some people do good with 7 to 10, so preference. But if you're feeling restored and energized when you wake up in the morning, that's a good sign.
That's a good night's sleep.
That's a good night's sleep.
So speaking of restored, we had a question about recovery, and actually somebody using a wearable technology talks about their recovery being better, even though it was like a less sleep that night versus long sleep. What's going on with that? How does recovery kind of fit into sleep, and how could you maybe get a better recovery but haven't slept shorter?
So there's a lot of factors that probably contribute to that. But let's just say if you're getting 6 hours of sleep, but the majority of that sleep is spent in your deep sleep and your REM sleep cycles, that's going to be way better than getting 9 hours of sleep where your deep and your REM sleep is very, very little. And the majority is like light sleep, right? So you can be getting very good recovery if you're spending, or if your body is spending a lot of time in deep sleep and REM sleep. I typically find if I have a really good, really hard training session, my deep sleep that night goes up because my body senses that I need the extra recovery. So it spends more time in deep sleep. So it is possible.
Okay, but that's it's quality over quantity.
Yeah, quality over quantity for sure.
So now you talked about sleep consistency. We had a flight attendant reach out to us. Their schedules are not consistent.
Right.
We kind of have an ideal, but we have the reality of life. And so what can somebody do who has to get up at different times each day?
This is very hard, especially when you're dealing with different time zones. So your body's internal clock is all over the place. My recommendation is while you can focus on your sleep consistency, there are the other things that you can focus on. So still the avoiding blue light, that applies to you. Avoiding alcohol or caffeine use too close to when you have to go to sleep, that also applies to you. Your room that you sleep in, make it dark, try to make it cool. All that stuff will promote, even if you're getting a little amount of sleep, it should be better than if you don't do those things. And if you're spending time in another time zone, like a significant amount of time, if you're going different places in the world, you can reset your circadian rhythm a little bit by simply going to bed when you feel tired and waking up when your body naturally wakes up. If you do that over the course of a few days, your internal clock tends to regulate itself a little bit. But maybe if you're a flight attendant and you're bouncing all around, that might be hard. But focus on those other things that you can't get sleep consistency in there. So try to do the other things.
Okay, we got one more question in the comments. It's one hockey player. Another. It says, this is for you, Jimmy. Did you experience difficulty after hockey games and practices in the past? I sleep. Always struggled for 3 to 4 hours getting to sleep and wake up exhausted.
Trying to think back. I mean, yeah, my games were usually in high school when I was really competitive. They were more in the afternoons, not so much the evenings. The thing with competition, so not just like hockey games and stuff like that, but games late at night or competitions late, they're always, you have so much more adrenaline in a competition or in a big game than you do in a practice. Or if you're just like someone else asked, like they're going out for a run later at night. I definitely had more of a struggle with games because you're so high on adrenaline, especially if you won, right? Like you're all hyped, you're with your team. I definitely had trouble with that. That's a tough one. Like it's hard to down regulate the adrenaline after a big game. So yeah, I would say I definitely share that experience.
Well, great, Jimmy. We
Yeah.
appreciate you going through all those questions. And looks like we exhausted them in the comments. That was really great. And I want to take some time to just thank you from me and everybody for sharing such a wealth of information. I think we're all going to sleep a lot better knowing some of these tips.
I hope so. That's what we were trying to get out of it. I hope people enjoyed it.
Jimmy, I sure did. And I want to thank you again. And we will talk to you hopefully sometime soon. And I'm
Cool.
going to say goodnight to you.
Thanks.
I hope you sleep well tonight.
I think I will.
All right, Jimmy, take care.
You guys.